Hey, I'm youtube.com/TheHoleInMyGarden, and I'm assuming we haven't met yet. So allow me to reclaim my manners and reintroduce myself by providing some context to this video and myself. Growing up, I was a huge fan of Star Wars, lightsabers, stormtroopers, the Force, everything. But I was a 2003 kid, so I was too young to actually experience any of the Star Wars movies during their proper theatrical release. But when I turned 4, my dad took it upon himself to expose me to all 6 films that were out at the time, which sparked my obsession with the Star Wars mythos. And in 2008, I was able to attend my first Star Wars cinema release. That being the shitty Clone Wars movie. Now, as bad as that film is in retrospect, it cemented the Clone Wars series in my head as my Star Wars. From 2008 to 2013, I had Clone Wars to turn to as a consistent piece of Star Wars media that would remain fresh as it grew up and developed along with me, starting as a normal above average kids show before eventually mutating into a fantastic dissection and expansion to the Star Wars mythology. But hold up. Why am I mentioning all this? Well, it's to establish that I have a great emotional connection to the Clone Wars and the universe Dave Filoni invented. So as you could imagine, anything related to it is going to gain some nostalgic bias. The release of Clone Wars Season 7 felt like a trip back to the past for me, going back to a big part of my youth and seeing it concluded as well as that chapter of my life. But after seeing the first trailer for The Bad Batch, I knew that I wouldn't be saying goodbye to the Clone Wars just yet. If you were at any point a fan of Clone Wars when it was both at its best or its most fun, then I'd highly recommend checking out The Bad Batch, as the show perfectly recaptures almost every core element of its predecessor in a way that is both familiar and fresh, as well as emulating the best aspects of those that came after its past iteration. When The Bad Batch were first introduced in Clone Wars Season 7, I thought they were fun and cool looking, but I never would have thought they'd be capable of carrying their own show. But within the first few minutes of the 70-minute premiere, I was more compelled by them than I was in the entirety of their 4-episode glorified backdoor pilot, expanding and strengthening the characters all beyond their simplistic stereotypes and presenting a vulnerability that you initially wouldn't have thought was there. Hunter, Crosshair, Wrecker, Tech, Echo are all characters which I can now confidently say I like beyond their gimmicks, as they navigate from their simplistic black and white mission and purpose of go to place, kill battle droids, make one-liners, and then go home, to a rapidly changing galaxy that flips everything they've ever known on its head, challenging their loyalty to something they've been fighting for since birth and forcing them to question what place is there for them in a galaxy that's transitioning away from the valor and heroics they were used to. Now, before some of you type out angry comments claiming clickbait or that I've misled you, let me bring out the best gore-clad space samurai in the room. The Mandalorian is what is considered by some to be the rebirth of classic Star Wars, a show which perfectly replicates the feel and origins of the original trilogy without relying on pointless pandering. Notice that I used the word some there. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely like The Mandalorian. The show's got an amazing soundtrack, groundbreaking aesthetic, and a cool premise. But I can't help but feel my interest and fond feelings towards the show are mostly superficial. Ideally, things like music, special effects, and story ideas should be icing on the cake, but in the case of The Mandalorian, it's like the whole foundation is icing with a thin layer of cake on top of that pile, introducing legitimately interesting story beats which you want to see followed up on, only to instead spend 5 of its 8 episodes dicking around with pointless side quests that rarely progress anything aside from the occasional callback or clue to where the next side quest is located. I don't give a shit about Din Djarin, I don't care about the child, and rarely do the most boring episodes add anything worth grabbing onto story-wise apart from a nugget of info. The basic premise of a mercenary having to raise and look after an important child in a dangerous and ever-changing galaxy that's constantly hunting for him is an interesting premise and one that The Bad Batch utilizes much more favourably. Let me explain. Omega, functionally, serves the exact same story purpose the child did for The Mandalorian, an important kid that is being raised by a group of mercenaries all the while being hunted for their usefulness to the Empire. And every episode past the premiere also utilizes the side quest format The Mandalorian incorporates. Bad Batch works better because, for one, Omega actually has agency and input. Baby Yoda is baby, and has no agency in anything until it's convenient. For real though, Omega helps the Batch during crucial points in their missions and is an important part of the squad, whereas Baby Yoda just sits around, throws up, and chokes Gina Carano for her political beliefs. He's damn near useless most of the time. And what's more, unlike The Mandalorian, Bad Batch's side quests don't keep teasing new things without any development for the last thing that was set up. Mando Season 2 set up Boba Fett in the first episode only to have him reappear 5 goddamn episodes later with no setup in between. In Bad Batch, if something major is set up, then they at least allude to it before its execution, making it feel like you're on an adventure with these characters and not some meandering side mission. When watching Bad Batch, I feel like every side quest is just a backdrop to explore the characters or develop the universe. I don't feel like the show has wasted the so far 6 episodes of its runtime. Mando Season 2 was incredibly frustrating to watch because there was a clear direction and purpose to the story's progression. Return the Child to the Jedi. So every time there was an episode that didn't progress that arc, I got incredibly frustrated that they were wasting its season. The Bad Batch's goal is just to lay low and be safe from the Empire, so it's more forgivable if they take an episode to do a job for some food and credits. Would I like to see more from Crosshair and the Empire? Yes, of course, but the Bad Batch and Omega, with the exception of Echo, are characters that are mostly unfamiliar to us, so I think it's more than fine for the writers to give them all some room to breathe and present them obstacles that challenge their worldview in an arc that isn't concluded within one episode. Given everything I said, I think it's important to reiterate that I do still like The Mandalorian, but I have a lot of issues with the way it presents its story, premise, and characters, which the Bad Batch very much emulates and does much better, also while doing other things that set it apart from its contemporaries. But who knows, maybe the next episode will suck complete ass and this video will age like a plastic cup of stale piss. But I have faith in the show and Filoni, and I'm excited for whatever the show does next. This was very much an experimental type of video on something more current and a shorter length of time. If you liked what you saw and would like to provide a greater input, please leave it in the comments, subscribe, like the video, and give me that sweet algorithm favoring engagement. Check out my Twitter for updates on videos or to read thoughts that sound better in my head than they do in text format, and my Discord server, both of which are linked in the description. That's all for now. See ya.